Hello, my lovely peasants. Today I look a bit different because it's a special occasion with the first Chainsaw Man anime season coming to an end. I think it's fitting to collect my overall thoughts into a single video. There will be major spoilers, spoiler alert for the entire first anime season, but not the manga. So if you haven't read Chainsaw Man yet, don't worry, I haven't either. And yes, the episode reaction videos will still come out. I've watched and recorded everything, but due to circumstances, I am actually releasing this video before those. So let's jump straight into it. Chainsaw Man is a coming-of-age story about a boy who learns there is more to life than Booba. Nah, I'm kidding. Life is just Booba. Booba is eternal. Denji is a down-on-his-luck guy who hunts devils to pay off his late father's debt. One day, he meets a devil called Pochta, also known as Best Boy, and the two form a bond when Denji gives him his own blood to save his life. But when Denji is killed, Pochta returns the favor and brings him back to life by becoming his new heart and turning Denji into a half-human, half-devil hybrid. And so, Chainsaw Man is born. Denji, thanks to his ability of turning his body parts into chainsaws, gets recruited by Makima into the public safety sector to become a devil hunter who finally starts eating well and sleeping in a proper bed. Sure, when you hear all this, you think, have you not seen all this before? Just a poor boy who suddenly gets powerful, fights a lot of bad creatures, and turns into a hero. Well, yes, but not quite. Because you see, the strength of this anime, like I said many times while reacting to the episodes, lies in the fact that the characters and their motivations are unconventional. Most of Denji's actions are motivated by selfish reasons, like touching Poopas, getting his first kiss, getting Makima to teach him the ways of sex, or simply just eating a good meal and not sleeping under the stars. And while underneath it all, everybody fighting the devils does it out of a sense of justice, they're all driven by personal reasons, rather than the greater good of rescuing mankind. And this makes all the characters, as silly as some of their motivations are, down to earth and relatable. You won't necessarily relate to their goals, but their drive. Aki wants to get revenge for his family who got killed by the Gun Devil. Himeno also has the Gun Devil as her end goal. Power wants to have fun and earn a Nobel Prize. Kobeni wants to earn enough money so she can send it back to her folks. We don't know much about Arai, but he mentioned his mother had become an alcoholic, probably because of the stress of overworking, so he might have felt that joining the public safety sector was a good way to stay on a clear path without, falling into the trap of addictions. This is one important lesson that I think Chainsaw Man teaches us. That being selfish is, after all, not a bad thing. Putting yourself first is not a bad thing. Doing something for personal gain is not a bad thing. Even if Denji, in particular, gets mocked over his superficial dreams, as long as his dreams give him enough motivation to fight the baddies, they're just as valid as any. What if he fought the bad devil just to go poofy? Sure, it's a bit unusual, but hey, it works. Saving humanity ends up being a consequence of putting themselves and their needs first. As humans, we are taught that we have to be generous and think of other people's feelings and needs. But Chainsaw Man is like, nah. An individual is just as important as the group they are fighting for. Denji is the typical protagonist I usually love. A bit of a dum-dum who is too young to sin for— wait. It's not like I ever wanted to sin for someone. No. That was never my intention. Yeah, let's move on. He's also horny 24/7. His coping mechanism is the lack of emotion, to the point that even he wonders if he lost his heart completely, because he's unable to cry even after people close to him die. But he absolutely works as a character. Thinking about getting laid and getting a girlfriend are, for better or for worse, normal thoughts for someone his age. Very ripe, not ripe, very sweet 16. But what makes him sympathetic is the fact that he is never pervy about any of this. He never touches anyone or does anything without consent. He is not throwing himself all over the other ladies. It's more like the other way around. It's funny to see how he's getting a sex ed crash course from everybody with various levels of success, including a traumatic first kiss. He's a simple man with simple dreams and aspirations with a few loose screws, to the point that I wonder if him having to turn into Chainsaw Man so often will make him become more devil than human. It's this kind of simplicity that won me over. The man just wants to live the good life, and he'll do whatever it takes to keep it that way. There's even a meta commentary near the end of the season of him wishing to become the protagonist of a manga. It's amusing because he doesn't see himself as being worthy, and yet he is the actual protagonist. Even when people like Arai tell him they envy him for his devil hunting skills, he still seems oblivious as to why anyone would envy him. I'm also a sucker for animals. People loving animals. Never mind. So having such a strong bond with Pochta is enough to win me over. Same with Power. She has more loose screws than Denji, but her love for her cat Meowie makes her human, even though, just like Denji, she's not really human, as by definition, she's a devil who possessed a dead human body to turn into a fiend. She's a brat who hates sharing food with others, hates bathing, hates following orders, clogs toilets with toilet paper, and will gleefully chop off a cow's head to get its protein. Rip cow, you're still missed. However, she's also craving recognition. She'll hammer down those devils because it's a lot of fun, but she wants the praise from her peers. And yet, as much of a loose cannon as she is, ask her to give blood to your dying friends and she'll do it. Just don't expect her to admit that she actually cared about helping them. Aki is the character who is the closest to the idea of a heroic protagonist. He cares for his friends, he will sacrifice himself for the greater good, he is motivated by revenge, he has the tragic backstory, he cries when no one sees him, he has no regard for his own self, as no sacrifice is too big if that gets him closer to the gun devil. And yet, he acts like a support for the actual protagonist, Denji, basically because he is big bro and protector. Truly a Chad. What a Chad! It's interesting that, in a way, Aki is like a mature, more emphatic version of Denji. They both went through hardships. Aki lost his entire family, Denji lost his, plus Pochta, but while Denji still had the will to live and look after himself, Aki allowed that tragedy to become his raison d'etre, fueling his thirst for revenge. They are both absolute sims for Makima, but while Aki knows his place, Denji fantasizes about getting to experience things with her for the first time, and they both can give some really good kicks in the nuts. However, thanks to the future devil, we now know that he will most likely face a gruesome death. You know it's bad when even a devil pities you, so our boy better make the best out of the time he's got left. Himeno once again was the type of character I normally don't sympathize with. What? Because she stole my eye patch! Mine is prettier though. And two, because she'd drink too much and would get too handsy. Although I do appreciate the fact that even inebriated, she still asked for Denji's consent, and when he rejected her offer, she just blacked out. Special mention here to the anime for recognizing how weird it would have been to have sex with a 16-year-old, even though the age of consent in Japan is 13. I might have also puked a bit in my mouth saying that 13 is considered an age of consent. Look, they are all kids. No, thank you. I want to see adults fucking, not kids. Wait, I don't want to see. I don't want to see anyone fucking. I say so, I swear. Where were we? Oh, right. But, just like Aki, Himeno would get emotionally attached to her partners and colleagues and do whatever was in her power to keep them alive. She'd seem cool and detached on the outside, so she could cope with the pain of the death she could prevent, but she was ride or die for her homies. And then Kobeni, Arai, and Kishibe. I honestly don't remember if Himeno ever mentioned that the sensei's name was Kishibe because he seemed to have wanted to keep that a mystery when Makima tried to introduce him to Power and Denji. But that's what Crunchyroll said his name was, so we are going with that. Look guys, binge watching is draining. I cannot remember everything. We were just briefly introduced to these characters, yet it was enough to find out that Arai was driven but not very skillful, Kobeni was skillful but not very driven, and Kishibe was bold, having killed Power and Denji dozens of times during their training arc. Kobeni is the wild card of the group because she's a typical character who is scared out of her mind yet gets the most shit done against all odds. I absolutely loved the fact that as sad and shocking as Arai's death was, for the entirety of that episode I thought both he and Kobe died, his sacrifice was not in vain, because him taking that second bullet for Kobeni meant that Kobeni was both able to retrieve Denji's body and stop Sawatari from summoning the Snake Devil and possibly kill Aki. And we don't even know with what kind of devil does she have a contract with. Kishibe is just a badass. He's the kind of character who can smell your bullshit, especially Makimas, and knows everybody's secret. He's almost like the town drunk, a man potentially not being taken seriously because, let's be real, he's an alcoholic, but he knows everything and can outmaneuver you at the flick of the wrist. He's the embodiment of never let them know your next move. However, his ability to read people so well also makes me worried about what's to come for him because it also puts a target on his back. So far, he seems to be keeping all that knowledge to himself, but as he's getting more attached to the kids, his desire to protect them will also likely grow stronger. These are all flawed characters discovering that they are more powerful than they realize and that they all care about each other more than they're willing to admit. Every death had an emotional impact and no character was disposable because their lives served a purpose as short as they were, and that purpose continued even in death. And while Himeno's death had been pretty much telegraphed throughout the series, with the way episode 8 unfolded with potentially most of the major characters dying, I was still shocked to see the massacre my gang went through. I think I said it during the episode as well, but as depressing as a death is, if it's earned and serves a purpose, other than just the shock factor, then I can accept it. I'm also very much against the practice of bringing characters back because it takes away from the emotional impact of those scenes. It's just cheating if that is not permanent. Don't use cheap tricks on your audience. If you write someone off, have the guts to go through with that and let the other characters deal with the emotional aftermath. In this case, Aki and Kobeni and Denji to a certain degree, because seeing the first person who genuinely tried to befriend him die made me question his humanity and why he's not reacting to her death the same way Aki did. I do believe though that feeling concerned and being aware that you're not as sad as you think you should be is still a sign of empathy, so Denji shouldn't beat himself up too much. I just hope that Aki's imminent death, if we are to assume that the future devil was being honest, and I don't see why they would lie about it, would be just as satisfying emotionally and represent a turning point in the other characters' lives. Personally, I would love if Aki dying would finally break Denji and make him cry for the first time over a person. And yeah, even with the knowledge that Aki's future looked horrible enough that even Devil was frightened by it, my wish is to still be shocked and surprised regardless, because after all, it's not about the knowledge of the event, but how that event unfolds. And of course, I'm saving the best for last, Makima-san. All the girls think she's a bitch, all the boys simp for her. I love the fact that even 12 episodes later, she's still very much a mystery. We know she's not entirely good, that much is obvious. She might not even be good at all. We know she's a master manipulator and knows people's weaknesses and how to get them wrapped around her finger. She will never help someone unless she has something to gain from it, because she puts a leash over good and vulnerable people, knowing that their gratitude will keep them loyal to her. She's the complete opposite of that Yakuza boss who killed Denji for being too loyal. She collects those kind of people as if they were Pokemon. Denji is her strongest asset, a pawn if you will. I think it's no coincidence that all the devils seem to be aware of how powerful Denji's heart, Pochita, is. Makima might have tipped them off to lure the God Devil out of hiding. The God Devil, seemingly the most powerful devil around, thanks to their capacity of killing hundreds of people within seconds, wants that heart. And I have the suspicion that Makima might be using Denji as leverage in her efforts to get to the God Devil. Kishibe is the first character to question Makima's involvement, or lack of, in the attack on Division 4 by all the gun-carrying people and devils. Getting herself shot also seemed to have been part of the plan because it's the perfect alibi, even though she did say to Tendo and Kurose, why do they have the same scar, by the way? That she didn't get injured in the attacks and that the blood on her wasn't hers. Just near the end of the season, we get a glimpse of her powers. She can literally make people explode and give them nosebleeds and make them faint without ever having to get close to them. And I feel that's not all she can do. The fact that she has power's eyes, but in a circular pattern, always made me feel that she wasn't entirely human. Which is why I was even too concerned when she got shot, because she always had that demeanor of being more frightening and more powerful than anyone ever imagined. However, I never thought she was capable of killing people without even getting in direct contact with them. Making someone say the name of her future victim. How does she even know all the names? Only to see them instantly explode is absolutely insane. The fact that Sawatari seemed to be aware of Makima's powers made her that supposed accidental look really sus. As soon as heads started exploding, Sawatari was convinced that it was Makima's doing. I wouldn't be surprised if Makima gained control over the snake devil to kill Sawatari and made it look like an accident because she didn't want to risk having her true identity and powers revealed. Why Sawatari knew about Makima? I guess we'll have to wait for the next season. And my mind also keeps going back to that scene where she tells Denji to remember a bite because I feel she will end up being unrecognizable at some point. And yet, Denji will recognize her thanks to that bite he experienced in season 1. The anime also hints at political turmoil between Japan, the Soviet Union, and China, and the United States through their gun contribution, having created the Gundam. Of course, it had to start in the US. Of course. I would not be surprised if she were a spy, double agent, seemingly working in the best interest of the Japanese people, but secretly forging an alliance and pledging her allegiance to a different country, like the Soviet Union or China. Because, if I remember correctly, the Japanese government is deeply concerned by how so many people in Japan were able to procure guns and attack Division 4. So her not stopping any of the attacks, even though she clearly had the ability to, makes it look like she is not necessarily working for the public. She even managed to scare Yakuza leader into giving her a list of all the people who have contracts with the Gundam. Not just his corporation, but every other mafia family, which will definitely trigger war among themselves. And she does so by showing them a bag full of eyeballs pertaining to family members of the Yakuza present in the room. That's a whole lot of people who will be copying my eye patch look. Her cold, cool, calculated persona makes her all the more frightening. Even scarier than her power is the feeling that we haven't even seen half of what she's capable of, and we don't really know what her end goal is. This is why I absolutely love her. She could very well be the most diabolical character in Chainsaw Man, but the way she carries herself, demanding respect, always being the smartest person in the room, I totally respect that. And speaking of guns, I think Chainsaw Man takes a very firm stance against guns, and especially against the United States of America. Not in terms of country as a whole, but against their weak-ass gun control policies. I took jabs at the US myself because it accounts for 73% of global mass shootings alone, and the fact that they have a mass shooting almost every single day is absolutely terrifying and mind-boggling. We see a glimpse of the World Trade Center burning down, which is the event that helped create the Gun Devil. The Gun Devil only grew more powerful. As we know, devils are born out of human fears. The stronger the fear, the stronger the devils. I like the fact that they are showing the strong contrast with Japan, which, in the anime, just like in real life, treats guns as something that should absolutely not be in human possession, as civilians have no right and no reason to bear arms because it will only cause death and carnage and chaos and concern. The concept of devils growing out of people's fears, the hybrids, the fiends, the devil hunters that can have contracts with them to use their powers to fight other devils, is pretty neat. Mangaka Tatsuki Fujimoto must have had a lot of fun not only bringing the devils to life, but coming up with things people fear, to the point that they're ridiculous devils, like the sea cucumber devil or the tomato devil. Though I have not gotten over that yet. The final fight of the season brought even more endearing devils fighting alongside the River 4, like the completely disinterested but absolutely deadly Angel Devil, or the adorable Shark Devil, Shark. Who even fears angels? Satan? But if the angels are the opposites of the devil, and there are humans fearing angels, therefore transferring the angel into a devil while remaining an angel, as that's the object of fear, isn't it a contradiction? It's taking something that most humans perceive as the purest creature and throws it into the most feared one. Steve Fujimoto, you clever motherfucker. However, I've said this many times, but I fear the fights were not the most impressive part of the show. All the devil fighting is the purpose of character growth, as this is first and foremost a story about a band of misfits learning how to live and fight and work together, despite their different personalities. When Denji fights the bad devil, it's so he can rescue Meowie and Copperfield. When he's fighting the Eternity Devil, the whole setup in the hotel has the purpose of showing us how every team member deals under stress and pressure. The fights are almost serving as a backdrop. Even the last fight of the season against the Katana Devil had the purpose of showing us that Denji actually learned something from his training arc, because he used trickery to give a false sense of confidence to his opponent. Yes, they are beautifully animated and choreographed, but the fights never get in the way of the characters and don't overshadow their journey. Don't let the style get in the way of the substance. A special, huge mention here for the absolute banger of an opening, both in terms of animation, filled with movie references, and the solid kickback song by Kenshi Yonezu. And of course, huge shout out to the absolute batshit idea of using a different outro for literally every single episode. Every single outro had outstanding animation, with the highlight being Ending 5 in terms of visuals and Ending 3 in terms of song, Awatari no Kuchenti by Maximum Dormo. Even the studio knew how good Ending 3 was, because they used the song multiple times in fight scenes. I was surprised to also hear TK from Link Toshite Singure on the soundtrack. That song is a banger as well. I know I referred to him as the Toshite dude, but I swear it was for the meme. It was for the meme. I know he's a very talented singer and guitarist, and I love the fact that they brought him in. Heck, even Eme had the song. As for the tone of the series, there was always a fine humor / tragedy / heart / what the fuck is happening balance, as the series never lingers too much on one thing and always alternates moments of high tension with some light-hearted one. This is also due to the fact that each character has a different way of coping with loss and tragedy. Some are affected by it, like Himeno and Aki, while others are more different and are able to get over it quicker, like Denji and Power. The anime just knows how to use the right amount of suspense and drama without getting too much in our faces. And while Denji's whole obsession about boobas and sex is a bit tiring at first, I just want him to grow out of that. It's also a way in which the anime plays with your expectations, because you keep waiting for that big dramatic moment where he realizes there are better things left to look forward to. Yet he doesn't really change his ambitions, even though his romantic / sexual experiences are quite satisfying. In that regard, I really appreciate the non-conventional hero's journey. I also like the way the episode 12 ending matches the beginning of episode 1, with Denji having the recurrent dream he can remember, in which he tries to reach out to Pochita, who is behind the door, but Pochita tells him to never open it. It gives you a sense of danger and a feeling that Denji might do something reckless out of love for Pochita, because he'd do anything to be reunited with the best boy. Even as Power told him that Pochita's sibling alive inside of him because he has his heart is pure copium, deep down, more than showing Pochita his dreams, what he would have really wanted was to experience those dreams with Pochita. There's also a voice asking him if he's a country mouse or a city mouse. I know it's a way of saying, but I find it interesting that he's now referred to as a mouse, since being a dog on a tightly held leash was the recurrent theme of this season. And in that instance where we saw mice in season 1, Denji thought they were very much beneath him, a dog, because while he was eating garbage food, but still food, they were eating puke. I don't know if there is anything intentional behind the usage of mouse in that sentence, or if I am just spitballing, but I just found it peculiar, as they are even underdogs in the Chainsaw Man animal tier list. Mice are clever and resilient though, so it shouldn't be an insult to be compared to them. Let's end the rodent stigma. So yeah, having not known a single thing about Chainsaw Man, I would say I quite like the anime. Okay, I liked it a lot. It will probably not be too obvious from my episode reactions because unfortunately I was not able to record the last ones in optimal condition, and by the time this video is out, I will probably not have released all my episode reviews either, because I was forced, basically, to binge watch the last half of the season. The Katana arc also seemed shorter than it actually was. Looking back now, 5 episodes dedicated to chasing down the Katana mini-boss while getting closer to the big gun devil boss was just the right amount. Had I read the actual manga, I would have probably realized sooner that there was no way that the gun devil would actually show up this season, so I would have adjusted my expectations accordingly. I hope the Katana Devil story isn't quite over yet, as I was intrigued by how that man basically became the same kind of hybrid as Denji, just with swords instead of chainsaws. Yet, it's Denji's heart that everybody's after, not the other guys who might have also merged with an equally adorable devil pet. If I were to complain about something, maybe it's the fact that they introduced a foil for Denji, almost equally matched both in terms of power and looks and type, yet it is not explained at all how come they are so similar hybrids. Even more so since at the beginning of the series, I can believe the hybrid stories to have been myths, and now someone else with the same attributes shows up, it's not explained at all? The Katana Devil background story was one I was really looking forward to, even more so because he was surprised and didn't believe Denji when he said that he was forced to kill his grandpa because he had become a zombie who tried to kill him in the first place. So, where did he get his wrong information from? I'm still angry about that, by the way. How could anyone dare to kill the one person that is the most loyal and would do whatever, even just for a yen? To be fair though, loyalty is the best and the worst quality that people like Denji and Aki could have because they will never bite the hand that fed them. Even if maybe they should. Season 2 could not come soon enough because even as the pieces of gun flesh are bringing them closer to the gun devil, there is still so much we don't know about certain people. And season 1 really left me hungry for more. I might start reading the manga because I don't even know how much of the manga was covered in these first 12 episodes. But I fear that if I do, I won't stop until I finish it, which would make my future episode reactions for season 2 less genuine, since I would already know the twists and turns. And as you probably noticed, I really like speculating and spitballing. Yeah, spitballing is my thing. Season 2 is likely going to be a wait until next fall, hopefully not 2024 though. It's a fact though that it will happen. Because it will happen. Duh. In the meantime, I will probably start watching and reacting to some more anime, so I am open to any suggestions because I'm more of a nostalgic weeb than a modern weeb. So I would be actually looking forward to watching newly released series like Blue Lock. But thank you all for sticking around. There are still episode reactions to be released, other things to react to, and me just doing variety content, as this channel will be a little bit of everything. I hope you will like what comes next, and if not, I'm sorry. It's been a pleasure making these videos. My biggest regret is not having given you the quality you deserve towards the end, because I was far from home, but I will be back and better than ever and hungry to create. Let me know in the comments down below, what did you think about Chainsaw Man? Did it live up to the hype? What did you think about my thoughts and comments on the series? Did the anime do the manga justice? Just no manga spoilers, please. Don't be that person. Thank you once again, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye!